Hi, thank you for anybody who might be out there watching tonight. I am Kay from KW McCabe's Truth Talk Tuesday Late Night Live. And before we get started, I just want to go over some of the things that will be happening in the next week or so. Again, Sunday, we'll be having a Books Galore event on the 13th. We're going to be having an amazing author come to join us. So that's going to be great. And then on the 20th, we're going to be having our bi-monthly content creator showcase. And it is called Creator Carnival. Is going to be so much fun. So make sure that you like and follow the page so that you don't miss that event. We're going to have more than, just creators of all varieties who are going to showcase their talents. So that's going to be great. And tonight we're going to discuss another topic. This is pretty much sort of a spin-off of the topics that we've been discussing over the last 2 weeks. Before I go into that, though, I'm going to add this and give a little bit of an intro of who I am in case you've never seen me before. So, again, I'm Corrine McCabe, also known as KW McCabe. I'm originally from Oakland, California. I received my BA in psychology from CSU East Bay, Hayward. I received my master's in counseling psychology and in forensic psychology from Holy Names University. And I've been an author since 2011. You can find various listings of my books in connection with the page. So again, I just want to thank you for joining, and I can't wait for us to go over the topic that we're going to discuss tonight. And what we're talking about tonight is the war that the body remembers. We're going to be discussing fight or flight, which pretty much everybody I think knows, versus boundaries, which most people I think know. And we're going to be discussing self-esteem and self-care. So fight or flight versus boundaries, self-esteem and self-care. So as we go over fight or flight versus boundaries, we want to discuss and we want to understand if you might know exactly what fight or flight is. However, you might not know exactly what is happening within your brain when it's going on, right? So, what does fight or flight actually mean? Where does it take effect in the body? When does it happen? Why does it destroy you? How do you combat it? What is self care? What are boundaries? How do you know when self care must be taken immediately? And finally, the body remembers, but you can rewrite the script. So, fight or flight really is something that we all experience. If you're a being on this planet and if you are alive, you have experienced fight or flight. Humans feel it, animals feel it, bugs feel it. If you are alive and breathing, you feel it. And it is a survival mechanism that, basically used to happen because we used to run a lot. Hence the title of the slide. We used to run a lot, not so much anymore. Some of us do, some of us don't. I don't. Most people understand that fight or flight is, or what fight or flight is, but they don't understand what it does and what is taking place in the body. They can see it and they can feel it, obviously, physically, but it's not as obvious neurologically what is taking place. When you are in fight or flight, the things that you might be able to see physically are physical examples of stress, right? So, like sweating, breathing fast, you might feel heart palpitations. Those are things that you will actually notice. These are things that you have likely felt before. Now, if we go to the National Cancer Institute, they describe it as a group of changes that occur in the body to help a person fight or take flight in stressful or dangerous situations. During fight or flight, certain hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol are released into the blood. And we discussed this a little bit last week, right? When we talked about the example of being in a car in traffic and you might experience road rage with some other driver on the road, and techniques to lower your adrenaline and to lower your cortisol, right? So the National Cancer Institute goes on to describe it as this causes an increase in blood pressure, heart rate, and breathing. Other changes include an increase in blood pressure, alertness, muscle tension, and sweating, or blood sugar, alertness, muscle tension, and sweating. So, this physical reaction during fight or flight gets you prepared to either engage in combat, you're going to, feeling like you're going to fight for your life, or to run like hell, right? To get away as quickly as possible. However, these reactions also take place in situations that may not be objectively life threatening, but the brain perceives the situation as an imminent threat and activates the system. So, the fight or flight mechanism actually, evolved as a way to save your life, right? If there is a bear coming, your instinct should be to run away or, do whatever it is that will scare a bear away. I know running is probably the worst thing you can do with a bear because they're faster. The point is that fight or flight gets you into the state of mind to survive, right? But nowadays, when we have less of these, uh, you know, attack situations, fight or flight still takes place because it's built into our system. It's an automatic response to perceived danger, right? So, say, for example, if you're at work and you're working on a project, but you're late, you're running out of time, and all of a sudden your boss pops up and asks you because you're past the deadline, is it done yet? Your heart might jump. You might start breathing faster. You might start sweating. You might even get a little frustrated or angry. These are normal responses. This is the fight or flight response. It's in reaction to perceived danger, even though your life is not under threat. So we used to run a lot, but now we grit our teeth. The fight or flight response is supposed to protect and guard your life from all threats, except when it overreacts and becomes the problem. Situations that are not life threatening, like the one we just discussed, right? A fight with a loved one, a demotion at a job, or a flat tire, or even a fight with someone you don't like very much. I mean, a fight, period. Anything that is not necessarily life threatening. All of these things actually activate the fight or flight response within our brain at the most inconvenient times because you're not going to fight and you can't run away. I mean, we've all been socialized that fighting is not what you're supposed to do. Right? We've all been told no fighting, try to work it out peacefully. So, in a socialized society, we're not throwing bows. We are trying to work out our emotions, and if you're doing these things, you're not going to fight, you're not going to run away. And so the fight or flight response then isn't very helpful. And these situations over and over again begin to cause ongoing damage and stress to the body. An article by Harvard Health Publishing states persistent epinephrine surges can damage blood vessels and arteries, increasing blood pressure and raising risk of heart attacks and strokes. This is how fight or flight destroys you, through drugs that your brain sends when you're out of control. And this is why fight or flight, constantly being in fight or flight, can actually destroy your body and your life. So, how do we combat the triggering of fight or flight? As the title says, calm down, cool off, keep quiet. We combat this by understanding and practicing self-care and boundaries. Boundaries and self-care are not the same, but they are correlated. What does that mean? They occur mostly at the same time. So a boundary does not exactly mean the same thing as self-care, but practicing self-care is practicing boundaries. It's difficult to have one without the other. An article in Psychology Today states that setting boundaries means knowing what one wants and expects from the people in their life and what you'll accept from them, and then clearly and concisely and calmly stating those ground rules. So this can also be in situations that does not involve people, right? This could be a situation at your job. This could be a situation on the road. This could be any situation in which you need to create space for yourself to moderate your own internal state of being. So basically, boundaries are knowing and clearly communicating what you need, what you will or won't accept, and what you are willing to compromise. This makes it clear that being vocal and precise about your needs is absolutely part of self care. Note, remember that boundaries and self care go both ways. In relationships, everyone has needs and the need to maintain boundaries. Now, this is really important because, we live in a time where everybody is pretty much focused on what is best for me, which is very important. Yes, but if you are in a relationship with others, if you are interacting on a daily basis with people who hold value to you in your life, then you also need to sort of compromise at times, right? I mean, if you want to keep them in your life, you will need to compromise. One way to know when it is important for you to practice boundaries and when it is important for you to compromise is to gauge it against your level of self-care and self-esteem and your needs, right? Your feelings of overwhelm, right? So say for example, you are in a situation with a group of people that you care about deeply, your friends, your family, and you guys have all decided that you're going to a picnic. And when you get to this picnic, you guys are putting out food and everything else, and everybody's yelling and screaming. There are kids all around, animals are everywhere, and you start to feel very overstimulated. And this can happen a lot, especially with people who are neurodivergent, right? We sometimes get overstimulated, we get overwhelmed when there's too much noise, when there's too much going on. It can become a little bit overwhelming and overstimulating, and we might need to engage in self-care. So in that situation, yes, you want to create space and time to spend time with the people you love, and you might also have to say, you know what, guys, I need a little bit of like 5 minutes to just go somewhere and calm down and bring myself back to myself. I need to get grounded. That's engaging in boundaries and self care as well as compromise because, yes, you're creating space to interact with the people that you care about. And at the same time, you are clearly communicating your needs. Get ready, stop. Now, many people find it extremely difficult to understand boundaries. They might not stick up for themselves or even violate someone's boundaries as a result. Right now, we've all experienced this, where you are again in a relationship with someone, whether it's family or friends or an intimate relationship, and your needs are being disregarded or they are not being taken into consideration over and over and over, and there's no compromise. Why? Because perhaps there is not an understanding that both people in the relationship or both people in the dynamic have boundaries and needs, and compromise has to take place in order for reciprocal care for each other to happen successfully, right? There has to be an equal exchange of care in order for boundaries for both people to be successful. And if someone doesn't understand what boundaries looks like, then this is not going to take place. So how do you know when it's time to stick to your self-care and or boundaries? One, when you're experiencing overwhelm, like we just discussed. If you're in a situation and you are exhausted and you are tired and you are stressed out and you are starting to feel the physical strain of being overstimulated, you might have headaches, you might have aching body parts, you might feel exhausted and overwhelmed and need to sleep. All of these are symptoms of overwhelm. Number two, if you are being psychologically abused, i.e., someone verbally abusing, gaslighting, or belittling you. Now, what does this look like? Being verbally abused can be you could be told, "Oh, you're so stupid. Oh, you are dumb. Like what? Who do you think you are? You think you're so great? You're nothing." That's psychological verbal abuse. "Oh, you're a loser." That's verbal abuse, right? So, gaslighting. What is gaslighting? Gaslighting is when you basically tell the person that what they see happening with their two eyes is not what's happening. That's gaslighting. So, for example, I'm going to give you a funny example. Say you're walking with a friend and you get to a crosswalk, and all of a sudden you see a rabbit, and this is going to probably not happen, but a rabbit hopping across the road really fast. And you both see it, and the rabbit is carrying, I don't know, a sock in its mouth. And you both see it. And you turn to your friend and you say, "Did you see that rabbit carrying the sock in their mouth?" And your friend, who did see it, goes, "What rabbit? What sock?" That's gaslighting. Now, or belittling you. That's basically when someone puts you down. Um, you could be working on a problem. You could be uh, trying to get an assignment done. And this person might say, "You never do anything right. Um, you you think that you're so good at this, but you are not good at all." That's belittling you. Number three, if you're being physically abused and or your autonomy is being ignored, i.e., no means no. So, you know what physical abuse looks like. If someone lays hands on you in a way that is uncomfortable and you don't want it to happen and you tell that person no, or even if you don't have the ability to say no and they are harming you, that's physical abuse. These are all examples of moments that are immediate grounds to enact boundaries and engage in self care. Now, the difficult thing with some of these, especially with the more intense forms of abuse, is that oftentimes the more intense the abuse, the more difficult it is for the victim to engage in boundaries and self care because they have been conditioned over time that that is against their well-being, right? So say you're in a relationship, and this is the easiest explanation to use. Say you're in a relationship with a significant other, and first there's no physical abuse. First, there's no physical abuse, and over time, first it might just be psychological abuse or emotional abuse, or just being belittled. And each time the person does this, at first you might speak out. I'm like, "Why would you do that?" They might gasp, "What do you mean? You're so sensitive. Why are you so sensitive? It's not that serious." And all of a sudden you guys are fighting now simply because you called out this person. So you learn over time that maybe arguing is a bit against your self best or self-interest when it actually is not. And over time, all of a sudden, maybe physical things start to happen, a push, a shove, a tap that's harder than it should be. And these things graduate into more and more intense levels. And you have been conditioned over time to accept it. And that is what makes it very difficult because over time you have been conditioned. And if these situations are taking place, I would like to take note. If these situations are taking place, the best thing for you is to reach out to get assistance to leave that situation. Now, you're going to want to start here. While boundaries are one way to engage in self care, they're not the only way. Other methods include praying, meditating, affirmations, breathing, counting, imagery, listening to music, exercise, art, creative work. Um, so it's very interesting because when it comes to affirmations and I think the connecting word sometimes that people use is manifestation, right? It's not something magical that takes place. It's not something that just, you know, metaphysically happens simply because you say it. That's not the mechanism. It's not magic. It's not destiny trying to make things happen. No, it is actually neurological. What is taking place is when you engage in affirmations, yes, a manifestation can take place, but the word manifestation is simply a description of the result of all the work that you're doing, right? Because if you're engaging in affirmations, if you're saying, I'm going to work on myself every day. I'm going to work on myself in this moment. And you do that frequently every day. You do that consistently every day. You are starting to condition a habit within yourself. For example, every day, if you get up, and most people probably get up sooner than this, but if you get up at 9 o'clock in the morning and you go to the mirror and you tell yourself, today I'm going to work on telling one person something positive about themselves, just one person, because I can't guarantee that I will say it to everybody, but I'm going to guarantee that I say something positive to one person. I'm going to engage in uplifting one person every single day. And then I will tell myself, I'm going to uplift someone every day. That is my goal, to uplift someone every day. And every day you tell yourself this, and every day you engage in this, pretty soon you will create a pattern in your brain. And what is that pattern? A pattern of uplifting people, a pattern of uplifting yourself. Why? Because when you create positivity and joy for others, you are actually creating a mirroring response within yourself. You are slowly becoming more positive. You are slowly uplifting your own personal character, right? You are manifesting a positive way of being. Manifestation is not magic. It is simply a description of what work you are doing within yourself. So, meditating. I am not religiously a meditator. What I call meditation is simply sitting in a quiet place and trying to regulate my breathing, trying to regulate my thoughts into a calmer way of thinking. That's what I call meditation. Now, I'm sure that that is not what the yogis would call meditation, but what I call meditation is simply self regulation, regulating my breathing, regulating my heart rate, regulating the thoughts that go through my head. That includes with prayer, with affirmations, with breathing techniques, sometimes with counting, sometimes with imagery, sometimes with listening to music, sometimes with exercise, and sometimes with creative artwork. These are all ways of regulating your internal state of being, the way that you internally process your own emotions. The list could go on, and really everyone has methods of coping while stressed. The point is to intentionally and purposefully engage in these methods of self care to heal. Rewrite your wiring. The body and brain are built to protect your life, and this is the point of fight or flight. However, fight or flight still tends to activate during times in our lives when you're not actually about to die. We just discussed this. Then it becomes necessary to recognize those moments when we might be experiencing overwhelm and immediately move to protect our boundaries and ourselves with self care. While it might seem impossible, even 5 minutes to yourself can be utilized to engage in self care, to bring down your stress levels and uplift your mood. Your brain will write the same neurological stress patterns into your system for the rest of your life, slowly shortening your lifespan. But you have the ability to rewrite that script by choosing positive action instead. So, as we discussed, if you engage every single day and making a habit every single day of engaging in one positive thought pattern, one positive action, over time, that will become a habit and it will literally write itself into your brain and change the way your brain neurologically treats your inner process, basically manifesting into a more positive way of being. So start holding boundaries, engage in self care, and reclaim your life. These are some of the references from the articles that we discussed today, and I will be posting these into the Creator Core group. So if anybody has watched any part of this, I want to thank you for joining us. And this is the end of our tiny talk. So you have a good night.